All right, Mike. Hello again.
Peter, what a surprise.
We're going to start to focus on what becomes of greater importance to you. Of great importance always has been, I imagine, but the relationship between character and body, and the idea of the body as such a crucial tool in an actor's um, toolkit, I suppose. That's really badly put. But so just where do you want to begin on this?
Okay, well, let me just more or less repeat what you said, that over the years I've come to realize that the body is much, much more important. I've always liked physical theatre and actors who work physically, particularly Eastern European actors who are so expressive with their bodies and free. And I, I've been very interested in the sort of work of neuroscientists who've been trying to explore very tangibly how our emotions work, what connects them up. And their findings, which is very reassuring and confirming, is that essentially the body is the first port of call for us as human beings, because essentially we are all the same human beings and have been since some period way back in our past before recorded history. Otherwise, how could we understand Greek plays, even with their very distant cultures, or closer to home, Shakespeare and Elizabethan values and how people thought? Because underlying all the cultural differences, the human being is hardwired in certain ways. And I do believe that it's a way of saying it, I guess, but I believe we have a little bit of everybody else inside us because we're human. We all have bodies and hearts and blood and hopefully everything working pretty well, but we're all the same. We've got hearts that, we're wired up and we are born with evolved instincts, which are these basic emotions: awe, fear, anger, grief, lust, joy, and so forth. And they're in us, and they're very much affected by how we use them is affected by our cultural values put upon them. I won't go into that because I think I have done this before. But creating a character is trying to get the actor away from him or herself, because although the actor is using herself exclusively, she has nothing else except her body, her mind, her emotions, her feelings, her taste. She's got no piano or football or canvas or lump of clay or harp or whatever you want, yeah? Or a microscope or statistics. She has nothing but herself to use in order to create another person. And the difficult concept for actors, which is sort of a paradox, although they are using themselves truthfully and fully, the play is not about them. The character is not them. They are using their emotions, feelings, attitudes, values, bodies, minds, intelligence to create another person. And even if they sense that character is similar to them in certain ways, it is still not them. And also, that character is probably living in a different period and even in a different country. So it's not them. You know, if they were just playing themselves in a sense, the character, and so identified with the character totally subjectively, well, they'd have lost it. They'd join all those Jesus Christ and Napoleons who are locked up, because, yeah, you get nuts. It's no good saying, oh, I am Hedda Gabler, when you can't even speak Norwegian. It's nonsense. But nevertheless, the work is truthful. And the difficulty is for people to understand that though you are using your emotions, they are not you're using your feelings, but those feelings are not about you and your situation, because that you're using them artistically, truthfully, in order to create somebody else, you're not going to take them home with them, because the problems of the characters are not your characters. When you go home, you've got different problems to deal with. Do you see what I mean? So this is the art of finding the truth. And the best way to start with this is to go through the body, because the body contains everything. It's not the body and the voice and the emotions. The body contains everything we are. Emotions aren't things that you clutch out of the air. They're in us. They're all, in our chemicals and wiring and nerve centers and so forth, aren't they? And the voice is part of the body. Very important. It's not a separate thing. And our feelings are in our body, and our thoughts are in our body, and you're trying to increase the actor's available repertoire of how they use their body, so it will give them access to areas of themselves which they don't often practice. Because we all settle into a certain way of thinking and moving, it's inevitable, and we can get locked into them. And the exciting thing for the actor is to say, I'm going to create somebody totally different. How exciting, and it's asking you also to use your empathic imagination to imagine what it must be like to be somebody in a situation which may be analogous to yours, but is different, or is totally different for yours. Because in theory, at bottom, I believe that anybody can play anybody. Women can play men, men can play women. Of course, women have experiences that men cannot actually feel, but you have an empathic imagination which will take you as far as trying to imagine what it's like. There are certain physical fundamentals because our bodies are different. Nevertheless, within that, you can play. Yeah? And you can imagine that you don't have a penis anymore, you have a vagina. You can actually imagine that. And why not? If you really want to, go there. I find most actors incredibly boring, although they may be very talented. They're always doing the same thing. And after a while, I think, I don't know why I'm going to see this actor, because I know exactly what they do before they do it. I know how they'll play different emotional states, because they simply don't move out of that little box they've comfortably settled themselves in, which has worked for them.
Yeah.
And it's not interesting. I want to, if you're a talented, actor, I want to see your Masha, your Lyubov Andreevna, your Irina, your Hedda Gabler, your Blanche.
Does an awful lot of that notion of kind of, an actor able to transform, which is certainly the sort of background that I came from. It was the kind of fantasy that you have, that you are capable of entering into all kinds of different states. Number one, most actors never get the chance to do that anyway. They would never get cast to do something that was kind of outside their normal range. And number two, are you exclusively talking about theatre, or would you include film and television in?
Well, film is different, because the sort of transformation. No, of course you can. Daniel Day-Lewis transforms himself on film. Guinness used to, with makeup and stuff, he would transform himself, and people adored watching. In fact, he was more interesting in characters as himself. I saw him do Macbeth on the stage once, and he was very boring, But Daniel Day-Lewis is a wonderful example of somebody who set out to find a very different character all the time, and that's his job, and he's right to do it. That's brilliant. What was wonderful about Olivier on stage, that you didn't know where he was going or what he would do next. And he is the only actor I have longed to see what he would do next. There are certain actors I'd love to see on stage again, like Cate Blanchett, and there's some lovely actors, but he was amazing because he constantly transformed himself. And if you look at books on Stanislavski or Stanislavski's My Life in Art and so forth, there's lots of photographs of him playing different characters. Of course, he's bedecked with beards and moustaches and wigs and but they're all very really different. And you can see what he was attempting. You see, so it's no good thinking about it. You see, you've got to change your body's comfort patterns to get to shift. And Laban effort is a wonderful way of making your body move in all sorts of different ways. So potentially you have you have access to every single possibility of what a human being could be. I think, the Laban efforts, there's nothing in human life that isn't covered by them in some ways. And so they're just a way of, even as an exercise, just extending the actor's flexibility. If you're light, or if you're strong, if you're direct, or if you're flexible, if you're sustained, these things will have meaning, and one could do it. We could do a session on Laban if you want. But that's a way of doing it. There's also the Michael Chekhov psychological gesture. There's anything which gets the body going out of its comfort zone.
Mm.
Obviously, if somebody's saying, let's say somebody's playing somebody who's lame, they have to go through the contortion, and just by doing that daily, you feel differently. The balance of your body, the way you feel about your body changes, and things like, doesn't it? And that is much easier to change than the way of thinking and the way of feeling, because the body, all the hardwiring in the body will take you somewhere else.
Before we sort of came on air, as it were, Michael, you were talking about, if you collapse your center here,
yeah.
If you pull in, down here, and you kind of slump your shoulders, you were saying it's terribly hard then for that person to start to get angry. And
I cannot get angry. I want to get angry, but I can't, because my body is saying, no, this is a hiding feeling. This is me avoiding.
Yeah.
I'm backing off in a way, aren't I? Something's going backwards. So I can be very resentful and say, I don't like you, but I can't get angry. I'm very weak in this position. Now, if I just do that, I suddenly feel very powerful. And if I force and push out, I get very aggressive in a very uncontrolled way. You see, so just that exercise will change the way you feel, and it's in the body. And I watch sometimes young actors, particularly young women actors, they walk around and they're very collapsed in their shoulders. And it drives me mad, because I'm thinking, you can't go anywhere. You can't be joyful. You're down there. So they're very earnest. I'm sort of, there's a collapsed state. No, there's got to be a wonderful, neutral, available starting point. Here I am, the actor, balanced, standing up, centered, my core very strong, supporting me, open, ready to work, and I can go that way, I can go that way, and I can go that way, and I can go any way you want me to go, because I've taught my body to be flexible. Now, what's interesting is you made a very good point about voice, and people think voice is some separate thing, but the voice is part of the body. Now, my voice isn't working terribly well today. It's got a sort of frog in it. But if I'm really centered, and there's nothing impeding the flow of energy, the center which keeps me upright and back also supports my voice. So my voice should be totally free coming from there. And I should be able to change it. People who are very nervous, they don't breathe down there. So the voice is coming from there. And if you're working from there, you're locked. There's certain things you can't feel if you come from there, because you're frightened. Or it could be a little bit down there. But once I get down there, I can do anything. The interesting thing is actors practically never explore their voices. If they're doing an accent, they do, and it sort of takes them somewhere. Often it's a cliche, but it also can be quite helpful. If I go there, I put, my voice goes up into the nose a bit, things like that, If I'm French, it goes somewhere, these are cliches, but there's a sort of truth to them. And the voice should also be part of the Laban effort and so forth. So the voice becomes part of it. Now, a very interesting thing that I noticed, I've worked with some dancers in a company in Germany, and when I gave them physical things to do, of course they could do anything. And they were so much better than the actors, although the actors could move, and they were so expressive. As soon as they opened their mouths, they had these little tiny voices and they didn't. So maybe as soon as they'd stopped doing what they knew, they locked their body off and they didn't allow the voice to come out because it was frightening for them. It was very, very interesting. You know, they should, if my body's free, I should be able, I can go out here if I want to. I was trying to ululate this morning. I don't know why. I go, can't get it quite high enough. Think, well, you could get up there if you worked hard enough.
Right. There's a funny paradox here, which I don't think I've ever quite sorted out. So, you're talking about, you're centered, and that can produce a voice that is centered and all that. But I'm playing a character who's, unbelievably anxious and terribly kind of self-deprecating, which will affect the way in which I physicalize, that I live in my body, which will affect the way I use my voice, in which case I will not be using my voice necessarily very healthily.
Well,
So,
no, what you do, and this is technique and training, so you're not damaging yourself physically or vocally or emotionally in this. If it's healthy, this work, if you do it properly, it's very healthy. Even if you have a very emotional scene, because it's not you, you can jump out of it. Particularly working with the pen we might talk about. Yeah, well, the thing is, inside you always is this essential you-centered, healthy you available. And you say, okay, I'm going to take myself. And I know I've got to kind of squash my voice. So I find a way of doing it that doesn't put too much strain on my throat. And then I have to make sure I do exercises to counteract that. And if it is too tricky, I do it. But you see, you can throw your voice around. Your voice can go into your head. I watched a wonderful voice teacher quite recently when I was working at Central School, getting a character to get right up there and picking up there, and it was wonderful what it did to them emotionally. It shook them out of their pattern, just thrilling. Because I've got a head voice. I was thinking if I'm doing Noel Coward, I sort of cover myself and I'm there, and it's me. I'm fully there, but I'm not. And I find the comfort in doing that. And I find the technique for doing it, and I make sure I'm not damaging anything. And then, it's technique. You see, all this says finally, the actor has to be master of a lot of disciplined techniques which do not harm her or him in order to be free to create. So whatever is needed in theory, they can go to it. That's the principle, because the whole point of characterization is for the actor to transform themselves into somebody else. It's for a human being to give birth to another human being and give them life. That's it.
Do you think, the idea of transformation, the idea that you could start to imagine what it's like to be Hedda Gabler or King Richard III or Hamlet or any of these other characters, which of course, Plato thought was very damaging, because if you could play a king, then you could be a king. If you could play a king on stage, then why not be one in real life? Do you think?
Because the king isn't you.
No, I know that, but
they are using you to.
Yes, but having said that, the king himself is playing, quite often is playing the king.
Well, he's playing there's an image he's trying to create. Well, we all do that in our life, not just kings. You have an image that, conscious or not, that you're presenting, so do I.
Yeah. But
that's who we are, because we want to be seen in a certain way.
But what I was getting at was, do you think it is healthy for us to have all that playfulness, which is what it is really?
Yes, Peter, because I was going to say, you talked about playfulness. What you want, and it's another of these endless paradoxes of acting, you want the actor to be able to sustain their childhood imagine fantasy, and they can believe themselves to be anybody else. And then with this, the very mature, grown-up, objective person who says, actually, I need to do a little bit more work on my arm, or I'm being self-indulgent, and to find a way of bringing those two things together in a whole, in a creative whole. Yeah, it's exact. No, because we're taught to grow up and be sensible.
And you would argue that it would be quite nice if we were playful out in our real world as well as.
Well, yes, to be more playful. I mean, people do, but then they're playful and they get drunk. Or they don't know when it's appropriate to be playful. But when we say playful, it's imagining, because kids can imagine they're somebody else. Years ago, we often go into schools and we were touring. We went into a school and we showed some Arabian Nights stories.
You told us that story. You told us that one.
What was that one?
About how they imagined. They did all the drawings afterwards.
No. This is a totally different one. Sorry. How dare you interrupt me? No, no. We were doing. We played. We actually had an Arabian Nights story, which was very funny. Probably wouldn't be allowed to do now because it's a joke about prejudice. It's a hunchback and a Christian and a Jew and a Mohammed. It's very funny. And then we got them to act it out. These little kids are 7, 8, and they must have done their parents because they were wonderful. They were wonderful. You just said the thing, I can't believe it. They were so funny, and you thought, oh, they're doing a bit of their parents are doing a bit of the play. It was absolutely magical because they weren't inhibited. And I don't know what age inhibition kicks in, but somehow in early adolescence, 12, 11, I don't know now, suddenly they get all, clumsy, all left hands and can't do anything. But before that, they just go with things and they just want to play. And because I can remember, actually, it's very embarrassing to say, I used to go to the picture store, and I can remember when I don't know why I was alone, lying on the couch at home and imagining I was a Russian prince, very moody, in a sort of, I don't know, it was Russian, sort of turban, very moody. And those were the days I wanted to be an actor, but it wasn't me. Because the whole point of acting is to say, I want to be somebody else and I want to understand somebody else. It's terribly healthy, this. It's not an avoidance. It might be for some people. I once worked with an actress in Germany who said, oh, I came on stage to hide. So I said, well, maybe a librarian's job might have been a little bit better for you because, darling, there you are on stage with everybody watching every bit of you. But anyway, but no, you see, and unfortunately now there seems to be a trend in the drama schools of some of them that we want to dismiss all this old-fashioned Stanislavski stuff and we want the kids to tell their story, which means it's all going to be autobiographical and solipsistic and narcissistic and so on. It's all about me. And you can hear it in interviews, people talk about themselves. There's a program called The Life Scientific on Radio 4, a guy called Jamal Khalili, who's a wonderful scientist, and he interviews scientists from all different disciplines, anthropologists, physicists, and I listen to quite a lot of them. And what I've noticed with awe and wonder and very moved by the enthusiasm and love and excitement when they talk about their job and how they do it. And they hardly ever refer to themselves and how they feel. When you hear an actor being interviewed, it's all about how I feel, how I feel rehearsing the play, how I feel about, playing the role, how I feel about before starting the performance, how I feel after the performance, how I feel about acting. It's all feel. And it's understandable in a way because the actor is dealing with their emotions as a tool. But they never talk about these subjects we've been talking about for God knows how many hours and weeks and years, about their craft. And I would love to hear that. I don't know whether I've heard her do it more than once, but I remember Judi Dench being interviewed and she keeps talking, oh, we were terribly naughty and we all corpsed. So they don't talk, they talk about the jokey things or forgetting lines or dropping props and they trivialize acting and it drives me nuts. Because proper acting would be very interesting, informative for people. And actors actually should have huge knowledge about human behavior because of what they do. And I think some do, but some are so caught up in celebrity and narcissism and typecasting that the whole business militates about them doing what an actor really could do and could be, which is a wonderful, human being, the body, the voice working, the emotions free, they're emotionally available, they're imaginative, they're empathic, very beautiful, but you very rarely see that. All you see is a lot of ego on stage and directors who stifle those impulses because of whatever they want to show. So I very rarely see a moment where I think, oh, that actor is so wonderful. That moment was so, because somehow their profession has been distorted, it's been cramped in some way by them, by their agents, by the business, by culture, by telly, by the celebrity culture. And it's very difficult, unless you're a very strong-minded actor, to survive and overcome that, And I think a lot of actors don't even realize or think that, So when they talk about character, they should be terribly interesting about people and their observations and understanding of people and psychology. Now, there's one more thing I just want to say, going back very much to the physical thing, and I think you glanced online. There's a guy called Stefan. Let me look this up. Can I do that? Do you mind?
Yeah.
Oh, I know his name. There's a German man called Stefan Perdikamp, and he's devised a way of working over many years, and it's called PED. It's Perdikamp's emotional
PEM.
PEM. Sorry. Oh yes, Perdikamp's emotional method, or something like that. And what he has done, he's observed the body and studied neural structure and a lot of stuff about the kidneys and our inner organs. And he gives classes where he gets the actors to work in certain physical states and even try to get in touch with their inner organs, which is sort of possible. And out of that, emotions come sort of fluently, without any trauma on the part of the actor, without having to imagine any situation. And I've done 2 or 3 workshops with him, and I invited one of his assistants to come in when I was doing a production of The Crucible at the Guildhall to work with the students, and I took part in it. And it was quite revelatory because I don't lose my temper outwardly very easily. I bottle things up. And I'll just give you a simple example. If I breathe very deeply, I make sure my nostrils are slightly dilated, my mouth is slightly open, and if I look at you, can you imagine from the center of the back of my eyes, I can start to feel very angry. And you sort of do this breathing, and then you start to move around the stage, and I tell you, my voice dropped about an octave. And I was going around that room roaring and at the same time feeling very free, because I could stop it like that without any harm, rather than having to relive some traumatic experience, because I don't believe in emotional recall at all. Or maybe it's an exercise for students, but it's very unhelpful because it's always coming back to you and you should be going. So I do believe that the physicality, I think I've done this before. If I go, it'll mean a couple of things. It'll mean, I don't know. I don't care. I don't know. I'm indifferent. Oh, it's French, isn't it? Oh. And that's there. It's if you commit yourself to really doing it. Now, a lot of people aren't connected up. They're not centered. So they'll do that, and it's just their shoulders go up and down. But when you move those, you should feel something reciprocal down there. In fact, it starts down there, the center. You see, I can point at you without any commitment. It won't mean anything. But if I really point at you, my whole being is directed to that. immediately I feel accusatory, and hopefully you feel a little bit judged or something. And it's as simple as that. So the body needs to be in wonderfully working order. It's not about pumping up and, getting a lot of big muscles. I mean, unfortunately, that's what a lot of actors do now. They're so busy with that. And too much of that can lock you, because if you build up too many muscles, particularly around here, you choke. There's big guys that stagger around because they're locked. You need to be flexible and reasonably strong and have stamina. Anyway, so I think that probably brings me to a point where we can say that's a reasonable discussion about characterization and the importance of the body in helping the actor to transform themselves into another person, which is not them.
Excellent. All right. Good, Mike. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll reconvene at some point. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that chat. And if you did, would you press the like button and also the subscribe button? That would be great. And if you wanted to be given alerts to when the next one is happening, just press the bell button. If you want to put any comments or any questions underneath here, underneath the video, please do. And at some point I will re-interview Mike, as it were, and put some of these questions to him. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.